So this is going to be a real nostalgia video, you guys, and I think it's just going to be a pleasure for me to record it because it's really going to bring me back to my childhood. Flashback to, I think, 1994. I had gotten my friend Zach into BattleTech, and it turned out that he had a much cooler game store in his hometown than I did in mine. So the next time I saw him after I got him interested in BattleTech, he had found this magazine, BattleTechnology. BattleTechnology was originally a quasi-official magazine, and a lot of the designs that first showed up in the magazine were eventually incorporated into the official rules of the game, but it became unofficial after a certain point, I believe. But anyway, the really cool thing about this magazine to me is that it was written as if it was a magazine for people in the BattleTech universe. It was kind of in-universe writing. It was all written from the perspective of mech warriors and war journalists during the Succession Wars and then during the Clan invasion. And these days, one of the cool things about the magazine is that it's available to you for free. You can find all of the issues if you go on Sarna and look under their Downloads and Magazines tab. So I'll put a link to that in the notes for this episode because I really encourage you to check out the magazine. Some of the issues aren't so strong, but some of them are really great. So I wanted to focus in this video on 3 of my favorite issues of the magazine from the Succession Wars period. There was just some really nice stuff that they were doing. Again, some of the issues had some stuff that was less impressive, but some of them had some stuff that was really cool. So I wanted to start out talking about issue 1, and first, right off the bat, take a look at that cover art, okay? That's some pretty cool art for a relatively low budget publication during the 1980s, probably. I think it was like the late 80s maybe, when the first issues were released. Just such a cool looking image of a Shadowhawk and a Vindicator firing into, retreating people. Also some really nice art on the interior. If you take a look at these illustrations of a Crusader and a Shadowhawk, both obviously the unseen images for those mechs, I think these are such cool images. It looks like the second one was done by William H. Keith, the guy who wrote the Grey Death Legion books. So that's pretty cool. The scale in that second one, it looks a little bit off, like the people look a little too big in comparison with the size of the Shadowhawk. But still, it's a really nice, nicely detailed image of a Shadowhawk. I really like it. And this first issue contains something that's really unusual to find, which is a Battle Force scenario. If you've never played any of the versions of Battle Force, it's like a large-scale BattleTech game where you play with units, even bigger than the ones that you can play with in Alpha Strike these days, right? It's for battalion and higher up organizations, battalion-sized groups of mechs. It's very cool. The original Battle Force, it wasn't such a great game at all. Battle Force 2nd edition was really good though. Anyway, the nice thing about a Battle Force scenario is that you get a roster for an entire large unit of mechs, right? So in this case, we get a full list of what's available to a couple of different battalions of the 2nd Kearney Highlanders. I just love going through and reading the names of all the mech warriors and what mech they pilot and stuff like that. I wish that more of the old unit rosters back then would spell out which variant of the mech they were using, because it doesn't seem credible to me that like a Federated Suns force, for example, would have all MAD 3R Marauders and no 3D Marauders and things like that. But setting that aside, I just love reading these long, detailed unit lists. I think that's such a cool thing to include. Okay, now issue number 7 is the next one I want to highlight for you. This one is pretty interesting. The mech on the cover that you'll notice, it looks kind of like a Battlemaster, except with some kind of a missile drum on its shoulder, and it doesn't have the PPC in its arm. So you're like, what's going on here? It turns out that that's a custom mech that they include in the magazine, which is kind of an interesting one. But first, let's look at a couple of the other things that they have in this issue of the magazine. So they have a kind of cool, quite detailed scenario here which is a battle involving the bounty hunter, as well as a mercenary unit called the Death's Shadows, led by a guy named David Death. I love that. The only thing is, I think it was only later that they kind of realized that they wanted the bounty hunter to be an extremely good mech warrior. So he only has veteran stats in this scenario, but it would be easy to fix that if you want to. It's a pretty cool thing to see. Now here's another thing, and I really want to know the story behind this. If anybody knows the story, like post it in the comments. But they have this photo, just a black and white photo, because the magazine, the interior is all black and white. But it's a photo of people, it looks like they're at a con. And what the caption says is that these are officers from the different successor states who were present at the wedding of Melissa Steiner and Hans Davian, right? So that's a pretty cool thing. And they've got costumes that kind of correspond to the dress uniforms of the different house militaries. Finally, here's the story of that custom mech. It's called the Alliance, and it was a mech that was kind of designed to commemorate the combination of the Lyran Commonwealth and the Federated Suns into the Federated Commonwealth. So it's a 100-ton mech. The original version of it is actually pretty bad. It's got like an LRM-10 and two AC-10s as its main weapons. But there's another variant of it that showed up in record sheets that have appeared, for example, in earlier versions of Mega Mech. And that's a version of the mech that's really strong. Like this really high-powered variant of the Alliance that you can find in some places, it has 2 PPCs and an LRM-20 and a bunch of medium lasers. So it's kind of a pretty optimized 100-ton battle mech, a little bit like the Imp. It's a really cool design. Anyway, I think this thing is kind of a cool piece of BattleTech history. They eventually retconned it to say that it was kind of a fake mech that was designed to kind of provide some counterintelligence or bad information to the other houses. But it's a pretty sweet little piece of BattleTech history. Now issue number 8 here, it's kind of a fun one. It focuses on news from the Fourth Succession War, and as you can see, the cover story is Theodore Kurita killing Frederick Steiner. But to me, the thing that I really love about this issue of the magazine is that it's the first installment in this fiction series, The Tales of the Cobalt Coil. Okay, this is the thing probably, I was gonna say what's the coolest feature that BattleTechnology includes over several of its issues. It's this series of stories, which are stories focused on a bar on Solaris 7. The narrator is the bartender, and there's an implication that he is a veteran and a former member of Winfield's Brigade, I believe, a kind of former Lyran officer. He's just this great kind of grizzled veteran character, and the stories are really cool, kind of war stories, character-driven stories set in the world of BattleTech. I like them quite a lot. And this issue also has a cool scenario that demonstrates some of the new technology that was developing during the Fourth Succession War. It focuses on Team Bonsai, which is a unit that doesn't get that much of a spotlight anymore. So it's got some really nice lore and scenarios here in this issue. I really like it. So check this magazine out. I mean, the production values are definitely not up to modern level kind of gaming journalism and gaming content. But as a look back into BattleTech history, which is very long and very storied, I think this is such a cool thing. And I really, I recommend especially these 3 issues from the Succession Wars period.